It's done. Your name and someone else's are inscribed side by side, and nothing can change that. No matter the time, distance, or circumstances, this connection simply exists. Someone feels it. Even if they try to ignore it, even if they fight against it, something within knows. You and this someone are connected in a way that cannot be broken. You realize this too, don't you? No matter how much you try to avoid it, this connection is there. Someone might pretend they don't feel, might distance themselves, might even try to erase the traces, but the truth always finds a way to make itself known. Destiny doesn't unite two people for no reason, and this bond between you and someone else isn't just anything. You've noticed it, haven't you? As if, no matter how much life goes on, something always brings this person back to your mind. As if suddenly a simple detail, a song, a word, or even a silence is enough to reignite everything that has never faded. You feel it, don't you? Because on the other side, someone feels it too. Even if they deny it, even if they try to follow a different path, the connection exists. Something greater wrote this story, and when destiny writes, there's no eraser that can wipe it away. How many times have you tried to forget? How many times did you think it was just in your head? But the truth always comes back, pokes at you, makes you remember. Because this isn't an illusion, it's not a passing whim. It's something that goes beyond what can be understood. And if destiny has united you, there's a reason for it. So listen, this bond doesn't disappear because it's not a choice. It doesn't depend on wanting or trying. It's beyond control, beyond logic, beyond circumstances. And someone, even if they don't say it, knows this too. And now what will you do? Will you keep pretending you don't feel? Will you wait for time to erase what destiny itself wrote? Or will you face this truth and accept that certain connections are meant to last? Because running away doesn't change anything. Ignoring doesn't erase. Pretending you've forgotten doesn't break that connection. Destiny doesn't need your permission to keep two paths intertwined. You can move on, you can keep busy, you can even convince yourself that you've gotten over it. But what happens when night falls, when everything is silent? The voice inside you still whispers someone's name. And on the other side, do you think someone just moved on without looking back? That this connection was only felt by you? No, because when something is real, it echoes in two hearts, even in silence, even when no one admits it. Life may have led each of you in different directions. Barriers, misunderstandings, wrong choices may have arisen. But there's something that always insists on pulling you back, isn't there? A feeling you can't explain, a longing that doesn't fade, an intuition telling you that this isn't over yet. Because when destiny writes, it doesn't draft, it doesn't toy with feelings, it doesn't unite two souls by chance. And if, despite everything, this bond continues to pulse within you, it's because somewhere someone feels the same. Now, tell me, how much longer will you keep pretending that you don't feel? How much longer will you fight against something that was already written to exist? Because the truth is that this connection was never a choice. It was never something that could be erased with time or replaced by someone else. You can ignore it, you can pretend you've moved on, but deep down, you know you haven't. You know that no matter how many turns the world takes, that name is still there, stuck somewhere inside you. And on the other side, do you really believe someone managed to move on without feeling that absence? That they managed to fill that void with another story, another face, another path? Don't fool yourself. When something is real, it can be delayed, it can be silenced, but it will never be forgotten. Because there are nights when the mind wanders and thoughts insist on searching for someone. There are moments when the heart tightens for no apparent reason. There are days when everything seems normal until some little detail brings everything back to the surface. And this happens because this story still pulses, still breathes, still exists. If it were meant to end, it would have already ended. If it were meant to be forgotten, it would have already been forgotten. But you're here, feeling, questioning, remembering. And do you know why? Because on the other side, someone else feels it too. They may not say it. They may disguise it. They may even hide it from themselves. But the truth always slips out, always finds a way to manifest, always finds a way to be felt. And now, are you going to continue letting pride speak louder? Are you going to convince yourself that all of this means nothing? Or are you going to accept that certain connections are eternal, and that no matter how hard you try to escape, fate will always bring you back to what truly matters? because ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. Trying to take another path doesn't erase what has been written. You can distract yourself, occupy your mind, fill your time with other things, but there will always be that moment when silence screams someone's name. And no matter how much you try to tell yourself that it's all in the past, you know it's not. Because if it were in the past, you wouldn't be here now feeling all of this, questioning, remembering. If it were just a closed chapter, why does the heart still insist on revisiting this story? Someone else feels the same way. They may not show it, they may not have the courage to admit it, even to themselves, but they feel it. Because when two souls truly connect, one always recognizes the other, even across distance, even in silence, even in absence. And fate has a strange way of working. Sometimes it separates to teach, sometimes it creates misunderstandings to strengthen, sometimes it makes one need to miss the other to understand what really matters, but never, under any circumstances, does it write anything without purpose. And so, what are you going to do with this truth? Are you going to keep pretending you don't feel it? Are you going to wait for time to heal something that was never a wound, but rather an indelible mark, impossible to erase? Or will you finally accept that some connections are greater than any attempt to forget? Because the more you deny it, the stronger it becomes. The more you try to move on without looking back, the more the past finds ways to make itself present. It's futile to fight against something that fate has already decided. You feel it, someone else feels it, and that connection remains alive, transcending time, ignoring logic, defying any explanation. What else needs to happen for you to accept this? How many signs still need to appear? How many times will you feel that name echoing inside you without anything around you mentioning it? Because that presence is real, even when there are no words, even when there is no closeness, even when everything seems to be over. Deep down, you know it hasn't ended. It never ended. It could never end. And if this insistence remains in your heart, if after everything this feeling still lingers, perhaps it's because this story hasn't reached its conclusion yet. Perhaps it's because fate is just waiting for one of you to have the courage to accept what has always been undeniable. Time may pass, circumstances may change, but what has been written will never be erased. And as long as this connection keeps pulsing within you, it will also remain alive in someone else, because fate does not make mistakes. And when it brings two lives together, it always finds a way to bring them back. Because deep down you know that this story is unlike the others. You know that this connection is not common. There is something that goes beyond reason, something that no explanation can define. You can try to convince yourself otherwise, you can seek distractions, you can even pretend that you've forgotten, but the truth is there, pulsing inside you. And do you know what's most impressive? It's that, on the other side, someone feels the same way. Someone tries to move on, tries not to remember, tries to silence that voice in their head, but can't. Because what fate brings together, life cannot separate. What is written down, no circumstance can erase. What belongs to you will always find its way back. How many times have you tried to avoid thinking about it? How many times have you told yourself it's just a phase? But the days go by, the nights come, and that presence remains there unchanged. Time hasn't taken it away, distance hasn't erased it, and lack of contact hasn't made it disappear. So how much longer will you keep running away? How much longer will you let fear make decisions for you? Because destiny is waiting, the story isn't finished yet. And this connection, the one that makes you feel even without touching, that makes you remember even without seeing, that makes you want even without understanding. This connection is not a mistake. Now, the choice is yours. Will you ignore it? Try to run away again? Pretend that none of this matters? Or will you accept what your heart has known from the very beginning? Because destiny can wait, but not forever. It gives signs, whispers through coincidences, makes you stumble upon memories when you least expect it. But there comes a time when it wants an answer. And that answer doesn't come from reason, doesn't come from pride, doesn't come from fear. It comes from what you feel, from what you've always known but tried to deny. And denying only prolongs the inevitable. What is yours will remain yours, regardless of time. But what about you? Until when will you allow yourself to live as if this doesn't matter? Until when will you suffocate what your heart screams every time you think of someone? Because the heart speaks. It warns when something still has space, when a story hasn't been concluded. And yours has been warning you for a long time. You feel it, you sense it. Yet you still question, still doubt, still try to rationalize what never needed logic to exist. And do you know what is stronger than any doubt? What someone feels. Because if that connection still lives inside of you, it exists within someone else too. Silence doesn't erase it. Distance doesn't change it. Time doesn't replace it. So what are you going to do now? Are you going to wait for destiny to decide for you? Or are you finally going to accept that there are stories meant to be lived and not ignored? Because destiny can guide, but it doesn't force. It places signs along the way, brings eyes closer, intertwines thoughts, but the final choice will always be yours. And that choice isn't in the words spoken, in the moments past, or in what could have been different. It's in the now, in what you feel at this very moment. And no matter how much you try to delay, how much you try to pretend it doesn't matter, there's always something that makes you remember. A song that plays out of nowhere, a name that appears without warning, a scent that awakens memories. Coincidences that seem like mere details, but deep down carry messages. Is destiny speaking, and are you listening? Because someone feels. Someone stays quiet, but they feel. Someone tries to move on, but carries the same unease. The same emptiness you feel when you look around and realize that no one fills that space. And no matter how many new stories arise, no matter how time passes, there's something that doesn't change. Something that remains, waiting to be acknowledged. And when two souls are marked by each other, it doesn't matter how much they try to drift apart. The world may turn, circumstances may change, but sooner or later destiny finds a way to bring them close again. So how much longer will you pretend you don't feel? How much longer will you try to follow a path that doesn't erase that presence? Because what was written, what was felt, what still pulses within you, was never a mistake. Because deceptions fade away with time, but what is real remains. If it were just a fleeting moment, a passing phase, it would have already been lost in the memories that time takes away. But it hasn't, has it? It stays here, present in every thought that insists on returning, in every feeling that makes you realize something still exists. And fate doesn't maintain connections without reason. It doesn't leave traces by chance. If this presence still pulses within you, it's because on the other side someone feels it too. They might not say it, might even hide it from themselves, but they feel it. And feeling isn't a choice. What more needs to happen for you to accept this? To understand that no matter how hard you try, there's no escaping what's already been written. You can take other paths, try to occupy your mind with other stories, but there will always be that moment of silence when everything returns once again. Because when two souls recognize each other, distance doesn't matter, circumstances don't matter. Fate finds ways to remind us, whether in the most subtle details or the most evident signs. It shows that this bond has never ceased to exist. So then what will you do now? Will you keep ignoring it, letting time pass by, waiting for life to decide for you? Or will you finally face this truth and accept that some stories were never meant to be forgotten? Because time may take many things, but it doesn't take what is etched in the soul. If this presence still lives in you, if this connection still manifests in the most unexpected moments, it's because it never left. It may have been dormant, it may have been silenced, but it never disappeared. And on the other side, do you really believe someone simply moved on without looking back, that this connection was broken just because they don't talk about it anymore? Silence conceals, but it doesn't erase. Absence hurts, but it doesn't undo. How many times have you tried to convince yourself that you've forgotten? And how many times has life proven you wrong? In the subtlest details, in thoughts that arise unexpectedly, in memories that don't ask for permission to resurface. It's as if a part of you still belongs to that story. No matter how much you try to move on, something inside you knows there's still an unfinished path. And when fate writes, it never makes mistakes. It brings people together, pulls them apart, teaches, prepares, but it never errs. It never crosses two paths by chance. It never awakens feelings for no reason. Now the choice is yours. Will you continue to resist, trying to deny what you already know? Or will you finally accept that this connection wasn't meant to be forgotten? There comes a moment when you can no longer ignore it. You feel it, someone else feels it, and that connection remains alive. Fate doesn't write stories without purpose. It doesn't bring paths together by chance. You can run away, you can deny it, but the truth always finds a way to make itself known. So what will you do? Will you wait for more signs, or will you finally accept what you've always known? If this message resonated with you, comment here. Fate has already written. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more messages like this.